G'day, I'm Mark Fennell and welcome to Download This Show here on YouTube, your guide to the week in technology, the internet and culture. In today's show, clickbait headlines, when are they bad? We review the brand new Google Chromecast available in Australia. We examine the best and worst of the new emoji, but we are going to start with YouTube, who are launching a brand new music subscription service. But please allow me to welcome this week's panel. He is an app developer and tech commentator, Peter Marks. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mark.
And she's the news editor for CNet Australia, Claire Reilly. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm going to play you 4 musicians, and I want you to tell me, what did they have in common?
Well, I bet that you look good on the dance floor. I don't know if you're looking for romance.
All right, so we have Adele, the Arctic Monkeys, Vampire Weekend, and Jack White. What is it that those musicians, Claire Reilly, have in common?
Look, I can say for certain that I don't think any of them have ever toured with Tom Jones. No, this is about something that YouTube is planning on bringing in, and I think they're going to have a few people kind of miffed with this one. They're planning on introducing a sort of a paid for subscription service. It'd be ad-free, a departure from the traditional YouTube model. But as part of the kind of new terms of service that they have for artists, there are some artists that aren't so happy, and some of their recording labels are saying, well, we're not going to sign these new terms of service. And YouTube said, great, fine for you. We're going to take your videos off YouTube. So you'll no longer be able to look up Adele or the White Stripes. You'll have a great deal of difficulty maybe finding some of the more independent artists, because the new terms of service for those artists are a little bit prohibitive and not really conducive to the way they want to be on YouTube.
See, this is an interesting thing. A lot of people don't realise that YouTube actually makes up one of the biggest chunks of this new category of streaming music. Now, I didn't realise that they were actually being classified as part of that until now. Did you realise that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's a new way of consuming music. So the thing that, when I was thinking about this, you know, Katy Perry and Lady Gaga, they released 2 singles, a single each, around about the same time. They were leaked on YouTube. There was a big storm. That was the way to view the film clips, which were sort of pretty rudimentary, but it was the way to hear the song if you hadn't heard it yet. So a lot of younger people especially are going, you know, I don't necessarily listen to traditional radio. I might stream music, but I still want to be in touch with new releases as they come out. So I'm going to listen to pop stars on YouTube, and I'll watch the film clips, and film clips become pieces of art. You know, you only have to see a 10-minute Lady Gaga film clip to recognise that. But I think it's a new way of consuming, and YouTube has sort of been providing this service a little bit for free, you know, out of the goodness of their own ad-filled hearts, but now they're monetizing it, and who can blame them? But I think it's...
Evidently, record labels can blame them.
Yeah, they can blame everyone. I think some of the record labels, some have signed up and said, fine, you know, it's a good way to get money for our artists, but others are not down with it. And I think the worrying thing for me with this is that it's potentially just going to create another homogenized music service where you won't be able to find, I mean, when Adele is cast as indie, or, you know, a kind of a more obscure artist, what does that say about some of the weirder artists? And I sort of think, what about the small time Aussie bands that are wanting to put their clips up? Are they still going to be able to do that? Are we just going to get really, really big labels and big pop stars on YouTube, and you won't be able to find the weirder stuff?
In terms of the music streaming market, we have quite a few. We obviously have Spotify, Rdio, and then, of course, there's the world of you know, Beats Music and iTunes. It's actually quite a crowded space. In terms of what YouTube could offer with this, Peter, what would it take, do you think, what would it take for YouTube to offer that would make you want to switch from one of the other pre-existing providers in the world of a subscription music service?
Well, I think after looking at the Apple purchase of Beats, there's got to be something there to do with curation and making the ability to build a playlist that matches what you already like, but throw in a bit of interesting stuff that you may not have heard. So I think that intelligent curation and that playlist thing, I mean, YouTube has channels and it does build playlists, but it doesn't really seem to know much about particularly musical tastes. It shows other topics that are, you know, of interest to you. So I think they've got to turn it into something more. But I don't know. I think what watching a music video and just listening to music, streaming music, are different things. And I really wonder if it's wise for YouTube to try and get into that. I know there's apps that just rip the music from YouTube and just use it, search for this artist, find me their hit song and play the music track. But that isn't always a way to get good quality audio.
What about you? What would it take for you to switch from, Spotify or something like that over to a new YouTube music subscription service?
I think it'd have to be a really, really streamlined user experience. At the moment, when you go to YouTube, it is very much so the free service is click on a link and then you're waiting for the ad that you're not really interested in. Then you get the film clip. I think it is like you say, Peter. It's just such a visual medium. So am I going to be streaming music, listening to a whole playlist of a certain style, or I think that curated content element is really important, and that's where Spotify has really won out. They can give you a playlist of like 50s rockabilly for your dinner party, or some lesser known Miles Davis tracks. You can build your own playlists. I think that YouTube would really have to get on that bandwagon. But I mean, they're part of Google, so they probably know everything about my music tastes already.
I'm fascinated that neither of you two mentioned the one thing that separates YouTube from all of the other providers: visuals. I mean, the notion of having a visual playlist at a party, surely that must appeal to people. If they can fold that in, wouldn't that be like something of a killer addition?
Like projected on the wall kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, almost like, there've been those visualizers that just listen to the music and produce, sparkling fireworks and all that sort of stuff. But that is different. And if it had ads in, at every track, I don't know that, it'd be very accessible.
Yeah, I think there is the potential.
The free version of Spotify has ads every track. And
I hate it.
Yeah, but that's why people end up paying for it, and that's a huge money spinner. I end up paying for it.
Yeah, I wonder whether it's going to see people starting to monetize the actual and really focusing on the process of making film clips. I mean, that industry is already so huge, and as I said, they can be these little works of art. So why not, stream them all, have them up displayed on the wall, some really cool offbeat Radiohead film clips, or, I think there's a cool opportunity there. Is it the way I would consume music? I don't think so. But I'm not representative of my generation. I went out and bought a vinyl player the other day, so
all right. What would it take for you to want to sign up to a YouTube subscription service? Let us know in the comment sections below if you happen to be watching on YouTube, or if you happen to be listening on SoundCloud. And of course, if you are listening to us in the car, you can let us know on Twitter. The hashtag is downloadthisshow. What would it take for you to want to sign up to a YouTube subscription service? Now, when we're talking about having it streamed up to a television, the perfect device for that would be what we're talking about next, which is the Google Chromecast. Now, to give this some context, we, at this stage, have 1,001 options for boxes you can connect up to your television. You've got your Apple TV, you've got PlayStation, Xboxes, and a lot of what they do has now been replicated in this tiny USB dongle. It's not USB, rather, it's an HDMI dongle. You plug it into your television, and then it does what? Peter?
Well, it just lets you send video from a phone or tablet onto the TV. So in fact, it doesn't do very much at all. It's just a receiver for the video that you're already able to play on your phone. So I guess the benefit of it is it's more cross-platform than Apple TV. So for households that aren't in the Apple ecosystem, then it does work with Android, it will work with iOS, it'll even work with Chrome, the browser, just running on your PC, and you can actually cast a tab. So it's very much a dumb device in that sense. It just sits there and receives. They're relatively cheap, $49 in Australia, around $50 compared to an Apple TV at $100 or thereabouts. Although Apple, I think, is just cutting the price just this week in Europe anyway, and I guess that will come through. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you have a phone or you have a tablet with you, then it's great and you use that as the remote control. But if you want to use something on your own, I quite like being able to sit down just with a little Apple TV remote control and just, rent a movie and not have to worry about anything except play, pause.
See, it's funny that you say it's dumb. I would say dumb but extremely flexible. Like one of the issues I've always found with Apple TV, and I quite like Apple TV, is that interaction between, and it's better than most things out on the market, but it's that interaction between typing, search something into it and having it find a YouTube clip. Obviously, where Apple is very successful is they've got that access to the iTunes movie store is right there, and that's really effective. But what struck me about Chromecast is that anything you can do in your browser, you can now do on your television, which doesn't sound like that much. But one of the areas where it becomes incredibly useful is something like YouTube, because what it actually does is it automatically looks for the highest resolution version of that YouTube clip. And rather than it streaming through your laptop or your phone up to the Chromecast, it has its own Wi-Fi network pickup and it starts streaming it straight to the Chromecast. So it's actually very, very smart. And one of the things somebody pointed out to me online when we were talking about doing it on the show was that if you're somebody that happens to stream TV shows a lot, it's enormously effective. They were saying the lag time's still not great, but it's a far easy way of replicating that television experience on your screen without having to, download an AVI or an MP4 or something like that. It's a really effective way of doing it.
Apple TV does the same thing. Sorry, if you're sending a program which is being streamed with HTTP live streaming, then what happens is your phone actually just passes that URL across to the Apple TV and it takes over the streaming. So you can actually turn your phone off and it will keep going. In fact, both of them have the same thing. They can stream, they can mirror, which is not a great way to do it because you only get the resolution of your phone up on the TV, or they can take over the stream. So, yeah, I think that most of the modern devices do that.
I think there's a cool opportunity here where, there are some similarities with Apple TV. The Chromecast, you've got a much more open ecosystem. But I think if anyone's ever tried to, look up a YouTube video using their TV remote and they're trying to type in ladder goat using the arrow across, it's cumbersome. Oh, life problems. But
I guess you can do it with your iPhone. The app, you can type it in.
Yeah, you can. But this is much more streamlined. And if you want anything that you can have in a Chrome tab in your Chrome browser, you can cast up to the TV. So that opens it up, and that means that, for people who are streaming TV, it's definitely kind to the people who are doing a little bit of shonky stuff with their media. Apple's ecosystem is very closed down. You buy your movies and TV shows through iTunes, but the ability to actually sit in front of your laptop instead of trying to navigate through the smart TV, and I think it opens up, we're seeing, it's just the start of Chromecast. I mean, Apple TV's been around since about 2007, I think. It's been through a number of iterations. So I think there's a real potential here with what could come, more apps rolling out onto it, the ability to do more with it, and it's much more streamlined than having to clunk around with your smart TV. So I think there's a lot of potential with it. I'm not sure it's quite there yet, but it's only just come out in Australia.
Peter, speaking as an app developer, what sort of apps actually exist for Chromecast at the moment? I notice there's quite a few over in the States. So Netflix is something that you can do in the States, which is a huge deal there, which we don't have access to. So what do we have access to?
Well, of course, the Google apps work. So YouTube works, the Play Music Store works, there's the Red Bull app, which has all those amazing action videos.
Gives you wings? Does it give you wings? No.
Presto, there's an Aussie podcast app called Pocketcast that works, but at the moment we're still waiting on all the TV networks, so ABC iView, SBS hasn't done it yet, the other commercial stations. In fact, we all got together and met with Google and talked about the API. It's more work than you might think. I mean, I think this kind of speaks to the difference between Apple's devices and Android, in that on Apple devices, video playback is all centralized, so that's why they've just got a button that says AirPlay this video. But on Android, the video playback is done with different libraries, different players, so it's much more difficult for them to just say, oh, whatever the video is, you can't sort of do it device-wide. So I think that their user interface guidelines are a bit wacky, and if you've played with the recent versions of YouTube where you kind of start playing and then you get this floating screen over it and then you kind of drag it down, and a lot of people can't figure out how to get rid of the video. You have to swipe it off the side. When they have Chromecast, what they want is they want your app to have the Chromecast icon on every screen of your app, which is quite different to the way it works in other models. So for a lot of us app developers working now to integrate Chromecast, it's kind of fighting with external playback video with a cable and AirPlay and internal video. It's quite a different model, and it's also a little bit flaky in the early releases. I'm sure it'll get better, and it will be more widespread. It's
interesting you brought up the catch-up devices, because I think the catch-up device is probably the kind of the deciding factor for a lot of people, because if you have something like ABC iView or SBS On Demand or 10Play or anything like that, what you want to be able to do in an ideal universe is replicate that television experience on your TV. So I tested it out a couple of times. iView, SBS On Demand, 10Play, the main ones I tried, which gives you an indication of my viewing habits. They were buggy, but they weren't bad. And I have to say, the comparison between using iView through a PlayStation and iView through Chromecast was pretty comparable, I found.
Now, you were using it through a Chrome browser, were you? And
Yeah,
sharing the
so
tab.
basically I just brought up iView in my Chrome browser, and then the beautiful thing is you kind of go up to the right-hand corner and they just cast this.
Cast
and it's
this tab.
I have to say that the simplicity of that motion is really, really good. I don't know what it is where, I've had AirPlay available to me all the time, but I very rarely use it. But ever since installing the Chromecast, I think because once you have the Chrome browser, and Chrome is the browser developed by Google, if that's always open, it's there, whereas AirPlay feels like you have to go set up the Apple TV and it's there, whereas the Chromecast
navigating
just
through a tab is just so easy. It's so native to you. You just type away, just easily. I think that's having used catch-up TV on my smart TV, and I'm addicted to a certain show at the moment, and having to navigate through, I was like, which is the recent episode? I can't see the screen from here. The text is too small. I think that experience of sitting...
Lady Reilly.
Old Lady Reilly. Can't work a TV.
Were you on the rocking chair with your shotgun?
And my banjo. So I think the experience, once again, of using your laptop, it's a much more intuitive experience.
Casting a tab in the Chrome browser, unfortunately, isn't the best experience because it is actually mirroring what's in the tab. So you're watching a flash player and then it's sending the frames up. So I noticed drop frames when we tested. It worked amazingly well, I have to say. So any of these catch-up services you can watch in the Chrome browser, you can send up, but it's not as good as it will be with native playback.
And we're also a YouTube generation, so we're so used to terrible visuals and low res, and we
know what? I actually disagree. I think we accept it on a laptop screen. I think we accept it on a phone screen. I think television, we are still striving for the best. And Peter, you will know this, that everybody who has iView goes, iView is great, but if I run it up to my television, it looks crap.
Yeah.
And I think that is an area where we've almost got this split in the culture where in most devices we will accept incredibly low res. But on televisions, we've been trained through retailers essentially and the device manufacturers. We can do ultra high HD, 4K, blah 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 blah. But nothing is available to you.
We don't have any high definition channels anymore.
No, exactly.
They're all standard definition.
They're too busy being filled with content. How dare they?
Oh, gee, I don't know.
That's my concern as well. So just how much your TV channels are going to be jumping on board with this. I think some of the broadcasters in Australia have been a little bit sluggish on some fronts before. I am concerned. I mean, in the States, you've got Hulu, you've got Netflix, you've got all these great apps, and I think it's going to come once again down to Australians don't quite have the same content, and we've got a sluggish system. They're not willing to provide the same content. I do know, however, some people that use both Chromecast and Apple TV with a VPN, so they're able to kind of the machine pretends it's in the United States and they pay for their content that way. They say, I'm happy to pay for Netflix, I'm happy to pay for my content, but I just want the content. I want it to be available. And I know that we've had some people telling us that they've been able to use Chromecast with a VPN to get things like Netflix. Just
to explain that, if you don't have a context for what VPN is, it's a virtual private network, and basically you can set it up and it tells the internet that you happen to be in the States, so you can then hand over and pay money to Netflix or iTunes or HBO or one of those people to actually legally-ish
Well, you're
pay
breaching
for it.
terms of use,
you are breaching
but
it.
it's not strictly illegal.
It's in a very odd grey area.
It's a grey area. And I know
you're
some
paying,
people...
but you're outside of the terms of use.
Yeah, people that justify it, that say, look, it is a little bit iffy, but I am paying for the content and I'm paying the creators of that content. So I feel that I'm giving them fair money for their product. So
can you buy it now and will the apps come, or is it the sort of thing where you should wait? You should wait for them to develop it further?
We're in a very interesting time. Sony's just announced their little box. There's probably going to be an Amazon box. There's likely to be a new Apple TV. I mean, at the end of the day, presuming you're someone who pays for content, which most people I think are willing to if it's available, then you're really talking about what store you want to have a relationship with. And the box that goes with that store is probably the best choice. Chromecast is a good general purpose device. As you say, you've got something in your browser, you want to see it on the TV, that's great. It just does that one thing. And no doubt it will hook up nicely with the Google Play Store. And if that's the store you want, maybe you want the Amazon store, maybe you want the Apple store, maybe you want the Sony store. I think it's a really interesting and changing time right now. So it'll take a while for it all to shake out.
Yeah, it's only just arrived in Australia. So I think there is still a bit of time before the app developers get on board, before, the free-to-air channels say, hey, we've got an app for Chromecast now. That takes a while to get off the ground. And as I said, Apple TV's been around for a while, so they've had a bit of a chance to get that quite established. So you can't really compare the two at the moment. I probably wouldn't rush out and buy one today, but, if it solves a problem for you, it's only $49, and it could allow you to do a lot more with your TV than you thought you could.
You are listening to Download This Show, your guide to the week in technology, the internet and culture, and great news for people that like to communicate in pictures rather than words. The world of emojis is about to get bigger. The little kind of icons that you can send with people over text. They're about to add 250 more of them, and this is all the work of the Unicode Consortium. They sound like a villainous sci-fi corporation. Please tell me they are.
Up on the top of Unicode Mountain.
On Unicode Mountain with being guarded by a dragon.
Yeah.
Who exactly are they?
Okay, so basically, when you're writing out a letter, you're writing out a letter with a pen, but there's a standard that dictates how script and text, whether it's Roman or otherwise, how it's coded and how it appears digitally. So the Unicode Consortium, they sit
better
there.
If you say it with a robe and maybe a pointy hat.
Oh, well, that's the uniform of the Unicode Consortium. Yeah. They are basically a not-for-profit group, and they control how Unicode is sort of rolled out, and they have a whole bunch of members who are sort of digital groups like Apple, like Google. Interestingly, it's not just new emojis, but it's also going to be things like, I think there's a symbol for Russian currency that is now going to be part of the new Unicode 7.0 that's coming out. So while there are some fab emojis that are going to come, there are sort of more practical and reasonable things it'll be.
So one of the things that I was surprised by, because this is very new to me, the world of emoji, because I'm not a teenage girl, is that Unicode, they say we're introducing these new categories, and then it's up to other people to design the actual graphics that go with it, which is why particular emoji look different if you're on a Samsung phone to if you're on an iPhone. Of the different announced emojis, though, what was the one that struck you as the one you're most looking forward to?
Well, one of the new ones is a Vulcan hand salute.
Yeah. Can everyone do it? Claire, can you do it?
I believe it's actually called raised hand with part between middle and ring fingers.
And that's
Why
the thing
didn't they just call it Vulcan salute? Would they have to pay, royalties to Paramount Pictures?
They do all have names, and if you turn voiceover on, or one of the accessibility screen readers on, they read each of the emojis. So they will say "pile of poo" or whatever the emoji is that you put into your email.
Or levitating businessman in suit.
That was the one that we talked about this earlier in the week on my TV show, and we all kind of went through the list and went, that's the one where I was like, what were they smoking? Why does that need to exist? Why, in any universe, would you need levitating businessman?
Well, a lot of them, of course, date back to Japan, and it was the NTT Docomo's iMode phones, which are a very early data phone. And in 1998, they actually had the original emoji set. And at the time, they were 172 12 by 12 pixel images, just very tiny images. And I guess the reason why they were needed was that, you couldn't send much data. So this was a way of expressing particularly emotions through a single character. It's actually a double byte character. And so they were actually included in Unicode, the global character set, at the behest of Google and Apple. I think it dates back to a couple of people from Xerox and also Apple who were doing international character sets and trying to get Asian languages in. At the time, everything was 8-bit ASCII, 256 characters, and of course then it would only handle the US ASCII, and they didn't even have all of the diacritical marks for European text. So this was a big step forward to go to a system that could cope with it, and then why not chuck a whole bunch of images in?
But it feels like it kind of died for a period. I remember emoticons were a concept that existed for a long time online in places like ICQ and AIM and whatnot, but its reintroduction into the mobile phone universe seems to have given it a new lease on life.
Well, initially, of course, we had that system where you do a colon and a dash and a smiley, make a smiley, and there were, a bunch of those with winks and things. Actually, I've got to say, I think a really good use of this is it's so hard to see if someone's being sarcastic or joking in a text message, and it's really great to be able to put in a wink or a tongue sticking out or something. That just helps to get the context right, whereas text only can be taken the wrong way. So I do think they're useful.
I mean, I love them. They have changed my world. And if that indicates that I'm a teenage girl, well, at least I didn't drop ICQ into the conversation. So, but I
What
think,
better way was there to break up with somebody in 1998?
yeah, so true. Yeah, I think it's such a fun way. I only use them ironically. So I pretty much end most of my text messages now with the squid icon, my favourite of the emojis.
What does that mean?
If you're not punctuating with a squid, then you're missing out on life. But it doesn't have to mean anything. I mean, instead of sending a message saying, hey...
Would a squid mean anything? That's right.
It's obviously a reference to soccer, World Cup soccer.
Oh, no,
I'm with you now. I understand.
No, it's a reference to Hydra from the Marvel universe.
It doesn't have to be a reference to anything. But speaking of comic books, instead of sending a message saying, hey, want to see Godzilla on Friday, I just spelt out the entire plot of Godzilla in emojis, dinosaur, explosion, wave, sushi, happy cloud ending, Friday. I think there's a great potential for comedy and ridiculousness. Or, you can just use them for trying to chat to 15-year-old boys. I don't know, if you're a teenage girl.
Now, we've heard your favourite combination of emojis. Peter, do you have a favourite emoji?
Well, as I said, I think the ones that express an emotion, that kind of decorate the message you're trying to send are actually useful. I really don't know why you would send a pile of poo to someone else, but it's there. But there's some,
option.
yeah, I mean, there's an amazing set to go through, and there's a lot of, there has been some criticism, of course, of emoji of being a little bit monocultural. There's 800 emojis which have people, but only 2 represent people of colour.
Yeah.
And, it
And
obviously
yet there are 9 different kinds of smiling cats. Like, why do you need a cat that's smiling but crying a little bit, and then a frowny cat?
Yeah,
it's all the same
apologising
cat.
businessman.
Yeah.
See, that's
there's
interesting because that's not so much in the hand of Unicode, that's in the hands of people that design it as well. There is a diversity issue in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe as new ones get adopted into the set, then, we'll get a bit better. But still, it's a really weird world, the emoji world.
Yeah.
And finally, here on Download the Show, I'm going to read you some headlines. This kid just died and what he left behind is one-tacular. Dustin Hoffman breaks down crying, explaining something that every woman sadly already has experienced. A brave fan asked Patrick Stewart a question he doesn't usually get and is given a beautiful answer. Those are all headlines from the website Upworthy, which is known for some of its most clickable headlines on the internet. And today we're asking, when is too much clickability a bad thing? When does clickbait become something negative, become something that undercuts the value of the internet? How is it, Peter, that Upworthy has become so powerful in terms of the shareability of content on the internet?
Well, they work on it. They make their headline writers write 25 different versions of every headline, and then I think they do A/B testing to see which ones are more clickable. And as they've said in a slideshow, which we've seen leaked, that often the first one is not the one that gets the clicks.
So they send it out to a sample audience, the two
I guess they A/B
potential-
test on the website and measure, click-throughs. I mean, everyone, Google does this, Facebook does this with design. It's a technique, but they've, to do 25 versions and see which one works better is an amazing bit of science.
We talked about YouTube, we're talking about emojis. All of these things are snack-sized, but ultimately very sort of... they're fripperies, It's the popcorn in some ways, the popcorn of media consumption and news stories. I think I have clicked and, I can say so many people would have fallen in and just gone, oh, I'm tempted, I'll click through and I'm going to see what this is about. I think ultimately the stories are sort of heartwarming and nice, and that's why they are so shareable. You are told just enough in the headline to think, oh, okay, I kind of have an idea to frame what this story will be about, but I really want to know what the actual tagline is or what the punchline is or what the big surprise is behind that click wall. And people are just curious beings, but they click through.
They run that balance between if the headline is too vague, then you're not motivated to click, and if the headline is too specific, you don't need to click. And they kind of walk that line. But I find often, the headlines promise more than they deliver for me, but it's never their fault. It's always something about me. I saw one the other day
Don't blame yourself.
That said, can you guess what almost all truck drivers are doing at night? And my mind went, ooh, what would that
Masturbating.
be? It turns out that it's running their engines.
Yeah.
So
Or
I
humans
kind of
need to sleep.
Yeah, so I got through it. I thought, oh, well, I'm disappointed, but then that's a reflection on me rather than on the story.
But it's not a reflection on you because they've led you down the path as far as you can possibly go, and then, psych, they pull off the mask at the end and it's actually just a very boring truck driver, running his engine. the thing...
No, I'm sure that relates to some important story about ozone layer or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a worthy story. And in fact, that's how they started, I think, was that they were trying to put people in touch with causes, you know, from the non-conservative part of the world. And that's sort of how it started. But they've clearly reverted now to an advertising-driven model.
And they say that they're all like, oh, we're sharing videos about poverty. And I think they've just signed up with the Gates Foundation.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, yeah.
So there's that whole, you know, we've got a greater purpose. But I think it is a little bit exploitative, the way that they try and lure you down a path. But, I mean, we are the ones that are clicking. And the thing is, it's not just Upworthy that's doing this. I mean, you've got sites like BuzzFeed. Even our mainstream media sites across Australia now are starting to do that. You'll never believe what happened next, because they have to monetize their content and they have to do that through click-through rates. It is disappointing. I don't know how long it'll last. I think there will be a call out because people are going to start getting sick of this type of title and this type of story. I think people are going to start seeking more analysis. It's all very new, and the internet is very much like popcorn and candy and quick, fun, exciting things that you don't really think about afterwards. But people, I think, once they're over that and they've got a bit of a, you know, a sugar hangover, they'll come back and say, all right, well, actually, I do want to go and find, you know, curated content or longer form stories. I think that format isn't dead.
Did you read the leaked New York Times report? They'd had stories in their newspaper's online site that were picked up by BuzzFeed. A better headline was stuck on them, and they had many more views on external sites.
And that's the thing. These sites are aggregators. So the content is available out there. If you want to look up the heartwarming video that a mum posted of her son, you know, sending a message to the war vet dad or whatever, that content is on YouTube. But what these people have done is they're aggregating. I wouldn't go so far as saying curating, but they're pulling it all together in one easy, like, info suck tube for you to look at.
But I fear for journalism. I just think we're in a bad place right now, and hopefully we'll grow up and grow out of this, because, as you say, people actually want to read a more detailed analysis, and we need to value that, and we need to find a revenue model that works, because just numbers, you know, millions of clicks on a story at the moment means money, and what we want is really attention. And yes, there was detail in there that I valued more. Maybe we need donation buttons or something.
And someone spent time working on it, and they checked with their sources, and they actually worked on a story that wasn't just like, I've got to get this up in 7 minutes, so what's the most emotive, what's the most kind of exploitative headline that I can get up. I think you're right. I think hopefully it will change, because this is all very new. And I mean, remember when reality TV came in and everyone was like, wow, I can sit there and I can watch someone else's life and I feel like Big Brother, and oh my gosh, this is amazing. Suddenly everyone realises it is, you know, it is what it is. They've seen it for what it is. There are still going to be some idiots and some bogans that go out and just want that kind of content, and good on them. And we'll probably still click occasionally, but I think we'll return to a model.
I think we'll wake up in the morning with a bit of a hangover and we'll say, now, what's going on in the world? I really don't know.
Yeah.
I love this show. We can go from Adele to emoji of poo to the importance of journalism. Only on Download This Show, which unfortunately we have run out of time for. Very big thank you to app developer and tech commentator Peter Marks. Thanks for coming back.
Very postmodern. Thanks, Mark.
And the news editor for CNet Australia. Welcome back, and thank you as always.
It's great to be here and discuss squid.
Please subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, and if you want to comment on anything you saw in today's show, you can down in the comment section. We'll be back on your radio 9 p.m. next Sunday and 1:30 on Saturdays. My name has been Mark Fennell, and thank you for watching another episode of Download This Show. The assassin always looks fairly effeminate anyway. It would not have taken that much effort to remove the stubble and make them a woman.
If it's multiplayer environment, then sometimes people want to run around as a woman.